Hey, good morning from a rainy and stormy Kansas City, and we're going to blame that for any technical issues we might have today. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, the Kansas City Star's weekly conversation about the Royals with the folks in the media who know them best. And fortunately for this show, those folks work for the Star. Beat writer Lynn Worthy and columnist Sam Mellinger are here. Hi, guys.
What's up?
The other member of our foursome, Vahe Gregorian, is off this week. So, hey, this show works because we get to hear from you. Please send us your questions and comments, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Before we get going, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. You will hear from them later in the show. So, about last night. And into early this morning, it was game number 111 on the Royal schedule, and it was unlike any other, not because it went a season-long 11 innings or a season-long 4 hours and 52 minutes, but because of how it transpired. And I guess we should say up front, the Royals lost the game 8-6, but I was trying to stay with it into the 8th, 9th, and 10th inning. I finally fell asleep in the 10th, but that's because, listen, I'm old and I just can't stay awake like I used to. If I were a younger fan like you guys, or a younger person like you guys, I would have stayed with it. And of course, Lynn, you were out there at the ballpark. Why was this 8-6 11 inning game so unusual?
Well, because the Royals decided to rally not one, not two, not three, but, well, I guess successfully rally 4 times and then had made an attempt at a fifth in the 11th inning. Yeah, so it was something to see that to come down. They were down one. They rallied from a 1-run deficit 3 times, a 2-run deficit, and then they were down 3, and they actually brought the they got the tying run on base, go ahead and run at the plate in the bottom of the 11th, but 3 runs was a little bit too much. And in between, you had, of course, bullpens giving up runs and home runs by Missouri natives and everything else that you could probably have dreamt of, even though most people were probably dreaming while we were still covering the game.
Yeah. So, just to let's if this game had a name, it would be Elias, because you had to check with Elias for the records that were set yesterday, and so one of them was exactly 0 times in the history of baseball have both teams scored in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th innings. That was a first for baseball, and the Yankees blowing 4 leads in this game was that a first or a first since a long time ago? I can't remember.
Oh, I forget now. I'd have to take a look.
My 2 favorite tidbits from this game, like I think we all agree, like this is stuff that you got to be a little bit nerdy to appreciate, but I'm the guy for the job. The Yankees used 6 pitchers in the game last night, and 4 of them blew saves. Like that's pretty incredible. And the other one, Jason Stark found this one. You just mentioned this, Blair, is the first time that 2 teams had ever scored in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th innings. But only 2 teams in the last 100 years of baseball had done that in any game. Like not in the same game, but in any game. So like we had literally, there's never been a baseball game like the one that we saw last night. And then the weird, like there was that, like, I mean, it was a hard ground ball, but hit to Nicky Lopez, and did it catch him on the cheek or the neck or something? And it was just like,
I believe it was the chin. It was like he caught it like right off the chin in the same game where they lost an umpire for a ball. They caught him off the chin earlier in the night.
Saved the Royals a run on that one. Yeah, it was just a super bizarre game. And I know, like, if you're looking at this just purely as a Royals standpoint, you're frustrated because they lost, but it's just, they say, like, every day you come to the ballpark, you see something you've never seen before. There was a lot of that. Last night.
Yeah, look, we had a ball bounce off second base for a Yankees base hit, and it looked like they had just caught the break of the game. And then the Royals seemed to catch a break on a play at the plate, which I thought Aaron Judge was safe. I thought the replay would indicate that, and was the original call of out was upheld at the plate.
I'm sorry, but real quick,
go
we also had the hardest hit ball in the StatCast era turned into a double play for the Royals. It was just like,
right.
What's going on?
And not a 500-foot home run, but a double play. That's yeah, a lot of goofy things went on last. It really was strange, and it was terribly entertaining. And Lynn, you were there. Sam, I assume you watched it on TV like I did, and I was caught up with Ryan Lefevre. I thought did a great job calling the game, and it's so enjoyable. It's never terribly enjoyable when you're there to cover a game like this, and it goes nearly 5 hours. So, what time did you get home last night, Lynn, or this morning?
I know I was on my way home, and in the car, definitely I saw a 2 in the front of that, which meant it was after 2 a.m. or in that neighborhood. So I remember that, and I remember being like, yeah, it's not good. I don't remember checking the time after that. That was all I really needed to know. And we are all blaming Josh Vernier. Vern, this was amazing how this happens in baseball, but I don't remember what inning it was. But at one point in the middle of that game, when you had no idea what it was going to turn out, he says something about how, that extra inning rule pretty much makes sure that the games they won't go but so long. Like he literally, we were having that conversation about how he's like, oh yeah, well that extra runner on second base, extra inning games never go long now. He's like, he said this way before we ever got to extras. And so when they got to the 10th inning and 2 runs scored, and it's like, okay, well the Royals going to rally from 2 runs, and they got a runner on. I turned around and looked at Josh and said, if somebody messes around and hits like a 2-run home run here and this thing keeps going, this is all your fault. And he was like, and to his credit, he said, yeah, you should blame me. Yep.
He owned it. He should have.
I just love, like, we've all, I'm sorry, Blair, but we've all been there when, like, you just asked Lynn, this is my favorite part of the show so far. You asked Lynn, like, what time did you get home? And did you notice this? He just goes, like he hadn't really, like, it just like drove through the hangings or whatever. Man, we've been there.
Absolutely. It was one of those games where if I had been covering it last night and I'd have gotten home, the newspaper would have been on the driveway when I got home last night. So the other thing about the extra innings, I think all 4 runners placed on second scored, right? The 2 in the 10th and the 2 in the 11th. So that, I don't know if that was a first, but that's what that's what you're supposed to do, right? If you place a runner on second, you're supposed to be able to get him around. And what happened in the top of the 11th, the Yankees did that plus 2 more, and that's what ended up deciding the game. So I don't know. Do we buy into Mike Matheny's great character, great I don't know, togetherness to stay close and battle a really hot Yankees team? By the way, I think now they have the best record in baseball since the All-Star game. Is there something there? I mean, the Royals haven't played well in the last week or so after playing well since the All-Star break. I did think it was a pretty gutsy effort. They're running out there. They're running out a team that I hope is not going to be terribly recognizable in a couple of years with a lot of parts. But heck, to score in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th innings to match the Yankees almost until the 11th, pretty gutsy effort. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that, not just to score, but to have to score. I mean, I guess the 7th and 8th, you didn't have to, but the 9th and 10th, you had to score runs or, the game's over. And to be in that position where, I mean, obviously, as a professional athlete, you never want to say anybody's going to just give up, but it could have been easy to be like, all right, well, they got us, we'll come back and get them tomorrow, another ball game. But to keep saying, no, we've got a chance here. We just need to get this 1 run or get these 2 runs and give our guys a chance and we can win this game. I think there's something to that. How much? I don't know. It might be one of those things that shows up down the line when if these guys who are part of this game are part of something maybe more crucial, or a run where they're able to put together some games like this, or to do some of the crazy things that maybe you've seen teams in the past do. If this is sort of the platform, the springboard for that, then I think that's when maybe you see that it's a really important thing. But I don't know if we can really tell that right now.
Bill Snyder had the great line, right, about they don't let you quit. Somebody asked him about that, like his team was down by a bunch and hey, they kept fighting. He's like, they don't let you quit. And I agree with what Lynn said, they're professional athletes and all that stuff. But I do think that it shows a little bit of something, right? Like, and not just like last night. If you just look at what I think they played, like 110, 111 games, something like that. And look, I mean, this is like a backhanded compliment that is actually an insult. I don't mean it that way, but there's only been one time that I can think of, and Lynn, I'd be curious if you disagree with me on this, that I felt like they just kind of looked beat down, just defeated, like emotionally just spent. And that was that day game, I think a getaway game in Boston, when they got beat, 1,000,000-1 or whatever it was. And, other than that, especially with like how many ups and downs this season has had, look, it doesn't, you don't get into the playoffs based on what we're talking about right here, but it does beat the alternative at least.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think if there's any game that jumps out to me. I know the game that you're talking about. And I'm trying to think if, like, when they had any of those, like, either of the long streaks, if there's a game that, where I just feel like, that it was just rough and you could tell that it wasn't going to happen. And I don't remember, I probably have to go back and think about it, but I don't remember any game where you just said, all right, they're just not in it. And, they're ready to hit the bus or get on the plane or anything like that. I don't remember many of those. And, and last night, like you said, last night was game 111. So maybe there's something I'm not thinking of, but it's not coming to me right away, at least.
The one I'm thinking of, I just looked it up on Baseball Reference. It was July 1st, 15-1. And that was the end of I'm not going to count it right now, but a fairly long losing streak. And for whatever it's worth, they won the next 2 games at home against the Twins. So I don't know. It's at least something that I think about with this group.
Yeah, and I remember the game that you're talking about was I believe that was the day that Bubic started, and I think they just, the Red Sox, I don't remember how many home runs they hit, but that was that stretch where they couldn't throw JD Martinez a changeup, but they kept throwing JD Martinez changeups, and they kept getting smashed. That's what I remember from that stretch. And I'm thinking they might, and I remember the stretch, but I don't remember if there was a specific game like that West Coast trip they had where you had the young starters get hit hard. There was some games there that were lopsided or that were rough. I just don't remember if there was any that were really just like, guys who are, I don't want to say packed it in again because it's, professional athletes, but some of those games were just over early because you had those rough starts from some of the pitchers. And so that would probably be like without remembering anything specific, like I would think that might be a stretch where you might have found a game where it was a little lackluster. But again, I'm thinking that's where it would be likely. I'm not pointing to a specific game.
Sure.
And Sam, you might have it called up in front of you, the Baseball Reference page. I believe that Boston game on Sunday was the end of a long road trip too. New York, Texas, and Boston. It was pretty demoralizing, especially the Texas series where they got swept down there. So,
and now that was a 9-game losing streak.
It is being interpreted, by the way, differently in New York, where Mike Vaccaro, our buddy and former Star reporter, penned a column sometime after the game. He's so excited that he penned a column in Eastern time, mind you.
Right.
The game didn't end until a few minutes after 1 a.m., and this thing got posted about 2:20 a.m. If one of those, if the Yankees go on to do great things, you could think back at this game in Kansas City. So hey, good for the Yankees to as much as the Royals had to fight back each time, the Yankees kept the pressure on in each inning as well. They don't score in any one of the innings. The game is over and the Royals win it. So a good, a very entertaining game and a good show by both teams. on Monday night into Tuesday morning. So, hey, let's take a break here. And when we come back, I want to we'll stay with that game and get into Carlos Hernandez and the prospect of the six-man pitching rotation.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Hey, we're back on SportsBeat Live, talking Royals with Lynn Worthy and Sam Mellinger. And before we leave the Royals 8-6 11-inning loss to the Yankees on Monday night, the line score was just one of the most bizarre-looking line scores you'll ever see, because all the scoring in that game happened from the seventh inning on, and every box contained a number from the seventh inning on. Before that, all zeros. And I want to talk about Royal starter Carlos Hernandez, who, my gosh, I mean, we've spent a lot of time, and deservedly so, talking about the Royals' young pitching prospects and how, when they're going to get here, what do they, how are they going to perform when they get here? And we haven't spent a lot of time talking about Carlos Hernandez. I think we need to talk about this guy, not just last night, but the couple of games against the White Sox. And he has I don't have the numbers in front of me, but this guy has just been terrific. And Lynn, let's kind of take us through the evolution of Carlos Hernandez to, how did the Royals acquire him, and his evolution. He made his major league debut last September. It was last month of last season. And just tell us a little bit more about Carlos Hernandez.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, his debut came in relief of Matt Harvey last year. That's it gives you a little perspective on where we were in 2020 in the pandemic season. I'm pretty sure he ended up, when Harvey had that stretch where he was only going 2 or 3 innings at a time, I think he was sort of the almost piggyback starter who made an appearance and then eventually made, I'm trying to remember how many, but I think he made 1 or 2 starts last year, so to take it over that spot that Harvey held momentarily. So, but yeah, he's still only 24. Like, it's one of those things that you need to point out to people, because everybody thinks of that group of young pitchers and doesn't necessarily think of him in that, because he wasn't a draft pick like, Singer, Kowar, Lynch, and Bubic. He was an international signing out of one. I'm pretty sure, Venezuela. Yeah, it was out of Venezuela. And I think he was also one of those guys that, for an international signing, he was sort of almost like a late signing. He wasn't a guy who signed at like 16 or 17. I think it was more like 18 or 19, if I'm remembering correctly. And so a little bit of a late bloomer for an international signee who, they've liked his stuff. They thought there was some, potential there. He throws 4 pitches now, and he's still throwing 4 pitches. He's not one of those guys who started off throwing them and then, one fell by the wayside. There's been some talk, because he throws as hard as he does, like, well, maybe this is a potential reliever, because, we've seen him hit 100 in starts this season. I think he hit 98 last night, but he's also got, off speed. He's got a change up. He's got a breaking ball. He can come at you different ways. And it was interesting last night, too, because we've seen some outings from him where command has been an issue, and he's gotten into some trouble that way. And he really didn't walk many last night. But early on, I remember saying, I think it was in the first inning, I was like, man, he needs a double play here. That rocket, that 122-mile, I think that was the ball that we were looking at. I remember thinking that, I said, if he doesn't get a double play here pretty soon, then he might be looking at a 30-pitch inning. And then you look up, and he ends up, I think the 3rd or 4th inning, he had like a 10-pitch inning, and then he had like a 9-pitch inning. And then next thing you know, he hasn't given up any runs, and he's, 6 innings in. I mean, he's grown just even in that, since that that first appearance last year behind Harvey to the point where, you know, he's in that conversation with those starters, even if people don't necessarily think of him as part of that group because he wasn't in the draft class.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that he was kind of under the radar, right? Like Lynn, you just mentioned this. I'm again, I don't have this memorized. I'm on his baseball reference page, but his professional debut, he's 20 years old, you know, and then, you know, before the pandemic, he was in high A ball and was doing well, but not lighting the world on fire. But God, if you just watch him pitch, I forgot it was a right-handed hitter. I forgot who it was, but you know, he got a strikeout just on a 98 at the knees on the black on the outside. And it's like, you can do something like that, you know, for strike three. You've got something different. That slider, you know, would be plus, you know, in the scout vernacular, and you know, the curveball and changeup are coming as well. I mean, he's got the whole part. You know, he looks the part too. Like I always think about that with like Singer. You know, he just kind of looks the part when he's on the mound. And Carlos, man, he just looks like he's in control. You know, the emotions are where you'd want them to be. And you know, if you've got a four pitch mix like that, and your fastball is averaging like 98, I think I just saw on Fangraphs when I was looking it up. I mean, that's you know, there's some stuff there. I mean, if that all comes together, that's a front of the rotation type of guy.
He is. So he pitched into the seventh last night and was throwing 98 in this as his pitch count was approaching 100. I don't think he got to 100. I think he was out at 90. Or it was right at 100, 99 or 100.
It was maybe 96 or something like that.
Was he there?
So it was a little shy. And this is a guy who, you know, his first I want to say like 12 appearances were relief appearances this year, because he had 4 starts, I believe, prior to last night. This was all, you know, sort of the background information that was in version 1 of 10 game stories that just never got seen. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was he's only had these last 4 starts going into last night. That was the 5th start. The 2 before coming against the White Sox were really good. But, you know, he had, you know, a lot of relief outings before that. He was up early in the season, went back down to AAA and started, and then came back again. It was in the bullpen. So he hasn't quite had the Edward Olivares shuttle run, but he was a little bit back and forth, and you know, in different roles.
Well, and we're going to see him once a week, right, with a 6-man rotation, and that's about what it's going to average out to with with him, Keller, Singer, Minor, Lynch, and Bubic. Why the 6-man rotation, Lynn?
Well, it seemed like it was pointing that way as soon as you heard that, okay, Singer's coming back. And when you look at the group that they have, when you look at, you know, Hernandez, Lynch, Bubic, they're all still, well, not all, but still young guys that they want to take a look at. And you're not really, there's not a candidate, or at least not necessarily a strong guy that you want to pull out of that rotation to add somebody in. Plus, you know, this is still the season coming off of the, you know, the pandemic year where everything was weird with innings counts and workloads. So also probably just makes sense to spread guys out a little bit and, you know, not have them going every 5th day, have them going every 6th day, and still get a look at all the guys that you want to see and get them innings in the big leagues, regular starts. And you still have your guys, the 2 innings eaters, you know, that you're going to rely on a little bit, and Minor and Keller to make their regular starts.
Heck, all these guys have been eating some innings here lately, right? Pitching into the 6th and 7th. The starting pitching has been pretty darn good of late, and would like to see it continue. Let's go back to the game last night, just for this reason. Bottom of the 9th, the Royals are down to their last strike. They're down 1. Witt had reached, stolen second. Nicky Lopez is at the plate, and he slaps a single. I believe it was a full count, but anyways, 2 strikes. Slaps a single to left, drives in Merrifield, and or maybe it was Dyson as a pinch runner.
It was Witt. It was Witt because
you.
Nicky's now in the second hole, in the number 2 hole, which is sort of, you know, it started in the National League ballpark, but it seems like it's sticking.
Okay, and I'm sure this was in the Royals' notes, and credit Dave Holtzman if it was, and certainly credit Ryan Lefevre for bringing it up last night. Over the last 41 games, Nicky Lopez has the 5th highest batting average in baseball, 338, something like that. I had no idea. Look, I know his average was up it'd been over 280. It's somewhere around 275 right now, but this guy's just playing his butt off. And listen, Salvador Perez is hands down the Royals player of the year for this team. But if you had to, for a non-pitcher, if you had to look for second and third candidates, Nicky Lopez is right up there for me. What about you, Sam?
I think it's true that he has made the most progress of anybody, at least on the big league roster. I don't know what to do with MJ Melendez and Bobby Witt Jr. and Nick Prado and those guys, but just on the big league roster, I mean, we're talking about a guy who, when camp broke, was told he would be the second baseman in Omaha. And then a couple hours later, or whatever it was, is told he's going to be the starting shortstop in Kansas City. And I think a lot about his season, and part of it is just we talk, baseball is such a, like, it's failure, right? Like you just have to, baseball players are built different mentally. I mean, they just, you develop a superpower of kind of, how to deal with this stuff. And I thought that Nicky Lopez was not good, ungood, as I might say, defensively for the first maybe month or so. I just felt like he was a little bit overwhelmed at big league shortstop. And then ever since then, almost like May 1st, it seems like he's been great. He's been really, really good defensively. And, I just think a lot about just mentally what it takes to deal with that disappointment. And then immediately it had to feel like, just sort of a lifeline. Now you're pulled back into Kansas City and you're given this opportunity, and to take full advantage of it like he has. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on him to do that, because at that point, he's a borderline big leaguer, and 4A is not off the table for, what his future is going to be. And he has taken this opportunity and made himself, a solid piece of the Royals' future. And it gives them a lot more options. It makes their lineup a little deeper. Assuming if this is who Nicky Lopez is going forward, second base is covered, and you've got a hell of an insurance plan at shortstop defensively for, any Mondesi injury. You can move Bobby Witt Jr. around a little bit, third base. I keep thinking like center field. I'm the only person thinking about that, but I wonder what Bobby Witt Jr. would look like in center field. But it gives the Royals a lot more options and versatility. And I'm trying to think, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong. I just think, like, as far as who has taken advantage of 2021 and made the most progress in their big league career, I think it's Nicky Lopez, and I'm not sure it's close.
I don't think it is close, especially when you think about, like you said, the guy who not only was going to start the season in the minors, but who, I don't want to say a lot of fans, because, it gets skewed on social media, but there were some loud folks who were ready to send him on the first thing packing, because they were ready to move Bobby Witt in there yesterday. And Now you look at what this kid has done, and he's one of your best players, all-around players, for what he's doing defensively and offensively, one of the most consistent guys. And I think it's starting to run together, but I think it was last night, at some point, I think we were sort of joking about how, Nicky comes through with that hit on 2 strikes. And somebody said, was there 2 strikes on that? And I said, of course there was 2 strikes on that. There's always 2 strikes on that when Nicky comes through with that base hit. I mean, and he just had the hit that gave him the win the other day in St. Louis the day before. So it's like, it's got to that point where you're almost expect it from him, at least this season, which is, I think, saying a lot for a guy who people were ready to give up, or maybe some fans, again, not necessarily most, but just the loud fans were ready to give up on, and who was supposed to start the season in the minor leagues.
This is stuff. Go ahead, Sam.
Well, this is, again, kind of nerdy, but what's part of what Lynn was talking about just kind of jogged my head. And this says a lot about a hitter, I think. Like when he's behind in the count, he's hitting 278. When he's ahead, it's 288. There's just, I don't know. And a lot of that is just how his swing is built. He's contact oriented, and he's a tough out at the plate. But I don't know. I think that says something about a hitter when he's basically just as good. Not as on base, but just his batting average, for whatever that's worth, is basically just as good when he's behind in the count. That is an ornery at bat. If you're the pitcher, that's a pain in the ass. and that's part of what he brings to the Royals.
And his defensive metrics are actually really good too, because I think the last couple of weeks you've heard Mike Matheny throw out Gold Glove, and we were sort of like, well, that's his skipper, that's what he's going to say. And then I think at one point last night we were looking up like some of the defensive metrics and just like, well, where is he at amongst some of the shortstops? And he's up there. I mean, depending on which ones you look at. I'm trying to remember. I think one of the ones we looked at, defensive runs saved, especially amongst the American leaguers, he's way up there. I think the only thing that as we were talking about, we're like, well, maybe there's some guys reputation wise that might sometimes that plays into Gold Glove, especially when you're talking about a guy who's supposed to start in the minors and who hadn't really been a shortstop. But defensive runs saved, UZR, I think outs above average. Like he's right there. You don't have to go scroll too far to find his name on that list.
Good stuff from the former Creighton Blue Jay, Nicky Lopez. Yeah. All right, guys, great stuff from you. And next week we will talk about the future of center field for the Royals. I think that's a really interesting. I can see a lot of other positions covered, but I'm not so sure what the Royals see about the center field. And I want to talk to you guys about that. And by the time we chat next week, Whit Merrifield will have broken Alcides Escobar's record for consecutive games as in a Royal. So he will own the Royals record for that. And that'll give us another topic for a week from Tuesday. Please join us then. Thank you so much for your attention, for your to listen to Lynn and Sam. Thanks to Beth Welsh, our producer, to the University of Kansas Health System, and we'll do it again next Tuesday at 10 a.m.